If you've never seen Jaws, it's a movie about a shark. And they're going for it. And there's people on a boat, which some philosophize needs to be bigger. Hello and happy awards season. I'm Louis Virtel. I have a vast and frankly freakish knowledge of Academy Awards history, and this is the place I go to blurt out all of my favorite Oscar factoids and gush about performances I love and also don't love. We'll get into some of those too. Welcome to Trophy Strife, the show where we talk about award show snubs, a great performance that deserved a trophy, whether they were nominated or not, they never won. Today, I'm focusing on the category of Best Supporting Actor because, as you know, men can act too. And I'm going to jump around time periods to keep things interesting. Try to keep up. Robert Shaw in Jaws, 1975. Now, okay, when Robert Shaw is in a movie, you have to pay attention. Let's talk about The Sting. Let's talk about From Russia with Love. Let's talk about A Man for All Seasons, where he was nominated for an Oscar for playing Henry VIII. There is usually something abrasive and kind of bewildering and kind of intense about Robert Shaw, classically awesome 70s actor. And in fact, he died quite young, so we didn't get many more, but his definitive performance is in Jaws, where he gives, I think, undoubtedly the greatest monologue of the 1970s. It's the famous USS Indianapolis speech, where he goes into his history and basically explains why this monomaniacal character is so invested in this journey. So Quint in this movie is a professional shark hunter who lives on Amity Island, and when you look at him, you just know there's a past. But you don't know how acquainted you're going to get with that past, and boy, do we. Now, as you know, Jaws is the definitive summer blockbuster, a fun popcorn thrill. They put it on at the Cinespia screening, everybody lines up and sees it. But this monologue lends this movie a gravitas you don't know it's going to have, and changes what we think of all the characters altogether. As he's going on about his war experience, we're studying the unnerving glint in this character, Quint's eyes. And I'm thinking to myself as I watch this scene, what is it about this actor that is making this such a greater moment than it needs to be? And I think a few things are at play. Number one, Robert Shaw is, are you ready? A writer. This is somebody who wrote books, adapted some of those into plays. One of those is a play called The Man in the Glass Booth, which was adapted into a movie starring Maximilian Schell, and he got an Oscar nomination in 1975 while Robert Shaw didn't. That is exhaustingly insulting to Robert Shaw. Secondly, the screenwriter Carl Gottlieb said that a whole bunch of writers, including Robert Zemeckis, submitted versions of this monologue that Robert Shaw eventually cobbled into what we see on the screen at the end. Steven Spielberg was initially nervous about this scene, but once he saw what Robert Shaw did with it, literally the words themselves, he became confident and knew that's what they were going to shoot. Now, of course, this movie, which was the blockbuster of all blockbusters once upon a time, has a few Academy Award nominations: film editing, dramatic score, which it won both of those, sound it also won, and Best Picture, which it was nominated for, lost to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Pretty good year for cinema. Robert Shaw received no nominations at all for Jaws, not in any award show or critics association. This is why we do Trophy Strife, so that you can be here with me during these tough moments. And of course, he only died a few years after this movie, so he never got another Academy Award nomination. Let's just move on. I don't want to cry in front of you. Michael Stuhlbarg in Call Me By Your Name, 2017. Now, 2017 was a pretty amazing year for movies. We had Lady Bird, we had Get Out, we had Phantom Thread, motherfucker. But we also had Call Me By Your Name, a movie that I had to see twice, maybe even 3 times in theaters just to swallow up all the deliciousness, the slowness, the intensity, the chemistry of the actors. It remains a one-of-a-kind cinematic experience for me. But another major highlight of this movie is Michael Stuhlbarg, who plays Elio, or Timothée Chalamet's father in the movie. He is a gentle presence, a welcoming presence, and then during one key emotional moment in the movie, he basically hijacks the whole film and gives this monologue that torpedoes you with new perspective and tells you something about him, or does it? If you've never seen Call Me By Your Name, Timothée Chalamet plays a 17-year-old guy who's living with his parents in Italy, and they take in this grad student played by Armie Hammer. He basically becomes obsessed with Armie Hammer, and then eventually a romance blossoms. But the movie is really about the headspace that Timothée Chalamet is in. We're really wrapped up in this world of obsession and insecurity and longing and sexuality. Now, Michael Stuhlbarg you may have seen from almost every prestigious movie in history. The list of credits is bizarre. Lincoln, Steve Jobs, Trumbo, The Post, Hugo, The Shape of Water, Blue Jasmine, Arrival. Almost all of these movies have famous performances, many of them Oscar nominated. He is still waiting for his first Oscar nomination, and when you watch this performance, you will be shocked he did not get into the supporting actor tally. Right when Elio is at his lowest, his father, again Michael Stuhlbarg, comes in and starts encouraging him to feel everything he's feeling, saying that most people are dried up and unable to feel after the age of 30. Now that's interesting because he's married to a woman in this, and we're like, well, what's up with your marriage? Are you not feeling anything? And he sort of implies that there might be questioning of sexuality on his own part here, but really the transfer of wisdom from him to Elio and Elio looking back at him, it's such an intimate moment that cradles the entire audience within it. It's almost unbearable how vulnerable the Elio character has to be in order to express himself to Oliver, who is played by Armie Hammer. And even though they have a successful romance for a while, it's eventually cut off. And what the father does, sort of reaching into the soul of Elio and pulling him back into his own brain, pulling him back into a safe space, is, I think, a feeling most people want in their lives. And so for that moment, Michael Stuhlbarg is kind of everybody's dad. That year, he was up against 2 actors from 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. And look, I can't justify atrocities like that. I don't know what's happening. Willem Dafoe in The Florida Project, fabulous performance. Richard Jenkins in The Shape of Water, you go queen. Christopher Plummer in All the Money in the World. Now, if you don't know that story, that role was originally shot with Kevin Spacey. Then they took him out of the movie, and Christopher Plummer shot it with about 15 minutes to spare. So I have to applaud him for just pure stamina. Sam Rockwell was the winner, and even though that's probably my least favorite Frances McDormand movie, we can't argue that he's a fabulous actor and also a fabulous companion to actress Leslie Bibb. I was shocked to realize that other gay people had seen this movie, including Frank Ocean, who said, "Michael Stuhlbarg is my new dad now, and that's that." See? RuPaul told IndieWire, "This movie is all about that scene with the father. I wish that he had gotten nominated for an Oscar. That Michael Stuhlbarg, since a serious man, he's been in every single movie that's ever been produced. He's amazing, and that scene with him at the end of the movie is perfection. That's what it's all about. That's what the whole movie is all about. So gorgeous." It sounds like he thinks that's what the whole movie is all about. Michael Stuhlbarg to me is kind of like a Michael Shannon. He's in enough prestigious movies that there's no way he won't enter the Oscar conversation in the future. So I'm looking forward to that. Vincent Gardenia in Moonstruck, 1987. I light up just thinking about this performance. Moonstruck, if you've never seen it, again, help me. Moonstruck is one of the greatest rom-coms of all time and one of the most soulful and enrichingly hilarious films you'll ever see. It stars Cher. It stars Nicolas Cage. They end up in a sort of torrid romance. She's supposed to be with his brother, Danny Aiello, and then Cher has 2 unbelievable parents, played by Olympia Dukakis in an Oscar-winning performance, and Vincent Gardenia in an Oscar-nominated performance. Though he's touchingly vulnerable in this movie, it really is all about the comedic line readings for me. I love how their comedy, the way they stress sentiments to Cher, only stresses her out. Basically, their only role in this movie is to stress out their own daughter. Now, Vincent Gardenia had been nominated for an Oscar previously for 1973's Bang the Drum Slowly. You may also know him from The Hustler, Heaven Can Wait, a movie I don't really recommend, though Julie Christie's hair, A+. And of course, Little Shop of Horrors. And while I have nothing bad to say about Sean Connery and The Untouchables, he won the Oscar that year, Vincent Gardenia is just one of those definitive dad figures of all time. And this category, as you've already heard in the Michael Stuhlbarg conversation, is the dad zone. This is where parents go to be awarded for being good or sometimes, and usually, monstrous parents. There are actually some fabulous nominations this year. You've got Denzel Washington getting on the board for the first time with Cry Freedom. You've also got Morgan Freeman in Street Smart, a movie that people do not talk about anymore. If you want to see Armani worn well, please go and check this out. And also Albert Brooks in Broadcast News. Probably my least favorite of the 3 main performances in that movie, but it's nice that he has an acting nomination. It's just one of those things where this is a movie with 2 Oscar-winning performances, and so you think, why not give it a third one for an equally fabulous parental performance? But you know, Sean Connery, I guess he has some prestige about him too, and a voice that makes me just want to hold the table. I had to bring up this performance because I believe Vincent Gardenia could be my favorite Oscar-nominated dad of all time, with the possible exception of Donald Crisp in National Velvet. Gotta go see that. And Revere, We Speak Your Name. If I had to pick a single greatest moment from Moonstruck, don't make me. Okay, I'll do it. It has to be when Rose Castorini, that would be Olympia Dukakis, says to Vincent Gardenia's father,
"Oh man, you give those dogs another piece of my food, I'm gonna kick you till you're dead."
I don't think we ever improved on that as a society. Gene Wilder in The Producers, 1967. It's so rare and awesome when something is nominated for an Oscar that's 1, comedic, and 2, seemingly ahead of its time. We talked about in the Supporting Actresses snub video how Geraldine Chaplin was both of those things in Nashville, but Gene Wilder at least got a slice of the pie with a nomination for The Producers. Now, if you're watching this video, I assume you don't need me to teach you about Gene Wilder, but I don't trust some of you. Gene Wilder, of course, collaborated again in the future with Mel Brooks on the fabulous Young Frankenstein, still my favorite Mel Brooks movie, and Blazing Saddles. But that wasn't it. He had awesome collaborations with Richard Pryor thereafter. And then his greatest collaboration of all, his marriage to Gilda Radner, who was an American comedian who was on a TV show called Saturday Night Live, and you can learn all about her in the new movie Saturday Night, directed by Jason Reitman. Please go watch this movie if you've never heard of this woman. Your journey begins now. The Producers, which of course was adapted into a legendarily Tony-winning musical, is about two guys who want to put out a play and make it bomb so badly that the people who donated money to make it won't ask for their money back. Gene Wilder plays Leo Bloom, one of the two titular producers who's trying to get this goose egg production going so that he can cash in his dastardly way. Now, Zero Mostel is a one-man machine in this film. Everything he does gets a laugh. But Gene Wilder does a couple of things in this movie that I love. One, he establishes his somewhat smart-alecky humor, which will become more of a signature thing later in his career. But then also, the comic exasperation he has in this movie is not something we would get a lot of from Gene Wilder in the years to come. So it's this meshing of two different comedy brains. Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder are one of the definitive collaborations of the 60s and 70s, and watching Gene just light up at this dialogue, freak out, get huge, shocking laughs, it really feels like no actor who came before him. Tip of the hat to his alma mater, the University of Iowa. Truthfully, if we want to talk about supporting Snubs, his role as Willy Wonka probably should be in this conversation. That is definitely a supporting role, even though he's in the title of the film. He appears something like 45, 50 minutes in. Now, there are people like Frances McDormand in Fargo who do the same thing and win a Best Actress Oscar, but I really think the stars of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory are Peter Ostrom, who plays Charlie Bucket, and his Grandpa Joe, played by the Oscar-winning Jack Albertson. And speaking of Jack Albertson, guess who won the Oscar the year Gene Wilder was nominated for The Producers? Well, it was Jack Albertson, for The Subject Was Roses, one of those plays that has three characters, and technically one can call themselves supporting, but really it's a gigantic role and counts as category fraud. Gene Wilder did have another Oscars moment later in his career. For Young Frankenstein, he got a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. And thinking of all the gags in that movie, all the jokes, and what the actors do with that stuff, that is a very justified nomination. He lost that Oscar to The Godfather Part 2, a movie that's lost to time. Who knows if it's good? The other nominees that year are really fascinating. You have Seymour Cassel in John Cassavetes' unbelievably garish, almost tough to look at faces. You have Daniel Massey playing Noel Coward in Star, and Jack Wilde in that year's Best Picture winner, Oliver. But Gene Wilder in The Producers is definitely the role we're coming back to again and again for shriek-sized laughs that we can only get from that impish and yet exasperated performance. Masaki Okada, Drive My Car, 2021. Some movies are almost too cool for the Oscars. They ignore certain narrative boundaries, certain prestigious guardrails we put in place, expectations we want out of a movie that moves us. But Drive My Car managed to win Best Foreign Film that year at the Oscars, and the performances therein are earth-shattering. I can't think of another movie like this. I can't compare it to anything else that's ever been nominated for an Oscar, and yet it's an immediately gripping and poetic story. Drive My Car is an epic-length movie that's adapted from a short story. It's about a theater artist who collaborates with his wife, and then something terrible happens there, and a couple years later we're thrust into a new story where he's reconsidering everything. He's sort of this life dropout, and a main part of the story is he is connected with this driver who drives him back and forth to the theater every day where he's working on a new production of Uncle Vanya. And one of the actors he cast for this performance is played by Masaki Okada. Now, the character he plays in this movie is a kind of competent actor, not overly talented, but he also happens to have been involved with this guy's late wife. So there's a triangle here going on, and we're wondering why on earth he would hire this actor to play this part. This is another performance that should have been nominated because of basically one monologue. There's a scene where they're in the back of a car and he's explaining his prior relationship with this woman. I can't even explain what emotions go through you while you watch this scene. It's very slow, it's very deliberate, and yet maybe it's because you're in this car, which is sort of a designated safe, tranquil space. Between these two actors, this new covenant is forged, and we're basically looking into the eyes of Masaki Okada as he tells us this story. So it's sort of another Robert Shaw situation, albeit completely different and not worrying me at all. Frankly, all the actors in this movie are fabulous, but I wanted to single this one out because you just have to keep looking at this actor and you get more and more from him as this scene goes on and on and on. There's a hush around this movie as you watch it, and then when you get to this scene, it's pure intensity. It gives you the suspense of like a Hitchcock movie. And I think this is all due to Masaki Okada delivering this dialogue to us. And frankly, looking at the other nominations this year, there was clearly room for him. J.K. Simmons and Being the Ricardos, that is the worst part of that movie, where William Frawley, the Fred Mertz from I Love Lucy, has one scene where he tells us it sucks to be a little bit older than he wants to be. Why is this in the movie? Troy Kotsur won that year for his very touching performance in Coda. Kieran Hines gives a lovely performance in Belfast. I love Cody Smith-McPhee in The Power of the Dog, but I don't think Jesse Plemons, who was also nominated, did quite enough for a nomination in the movie. So I think there was definitely room for Drive My Car to enter the conversation. When you watch this movie, you will absolutely want to seek out the work of the director Ryusuke Hamaguchi. He also directed that year's Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, another unbelievable movie. So keep coming at us, Masaki Okada. We're listening. Peter Ustinov in Quo Vadis, 1951. Now, don't get it twisted. Peter Ustinov is one of the definitive Oscar winners of all time. He won 2 Best Supporting Actor Oscars well after this movie, and he also is probably my favorite Hercule Poirot of all time. He starred in Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun, and when you hear him talk, you just want him to keep talking. He has that audiobook voice. He has that rich, actorly voice that you expect from the greats of Hollywood. And he's also amazing on panel game shows. Look him up on What's My Line. I would kick out half the other people if he would just stay on the show. So Quo Vadis is an epic that takes place from 64 to 68 AD during the final years of the Emperor Nero's reign. You may have heard that he is extremely corrupt, bloodthirsty. He is both of those things. But unfortunately for history, and fortunately for viewers, he was apparently very funny. Although his performance takes a more tragic, scary turn near the end, really the buffoonery he brings to this role is why you should see it. They never tell you this in the history books, but apparently Nero was the original Jenna Maroney. This is somebody who's handed a musical instrument and says, "I can't," and then starts playing it. In a way, it feels a little bit like a classical actor who's slumping to play this stupid, ridiculous man, but that gravitas really lends something to the movie. You could watch just his scenes again and again, and truly it's as thrilling and funny as some A-plus Dynamite sitcom. Now, Peter Ustinov did win the Golden Globe for this performance, but that just doesn't always translate to Oscar gold. This year in the Oscar race is a real mishmash. You've got Gig Young, look up that story, doesn't end well, who plays an alcoholic in Come Fill the Cup. You've got Kevin McCarthy, who we'd later know from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, in Death of a Salesman, a movie I fucking love. I already talked about Mildred Dunnick last time. Moving on. You've also got Leo Jen from Quo Vadis, and you've got Carl Malden, who won for playing, honestly, my least favorite of the 4 performances in A Streetcar Named Desire. I would have easily given this win to Peter Ustinov. Shout out to this movie for getting 8 nominations, no wins, but also starting a huge streak for the fabulous Deborah Kerr, who will be a major Oscars presence throughout the 1950s, and also won't win a thing. But as I said earlier, Peter Ustinov's Oscar story was not done yet. He would win 2 Oscars in a row for his next 2 nominations, one for Spartacus, one for Top Copy, and then he would later be nominated for a Story and Screenplay Oscar for the movie Hot Millions from 1968. And you always have to trust actors who get the screenplay nomination in addition to the acting nomination. Are they wizards? And I just want to emphasize, he's got that Jeremy Irons, Morgan Freeman thing where it just takes 2 notes of him opening his mouth and speaking before you are enthralled with his whole personality.
And it was Quo Vadis.
Andrew Garfield, The Social Network, 2010. Do you not recognize that name? Let me try to describe it. Recent Keep It guest, Andrew Garfield, ring a bell? Andrew Garfield is, of course, one of the definitive stars of the past 15 years. You may know him from his breakout role in Get Ready, Lions for Lambs. He was in Never Let Me Go. He was in The Eyes of Tammy Faye. He was nominated for an Oscar for Hacksaw Ridge and Tick, Tick, Boom. You probably saw him in 99 Homes. One time he played, let me read this here, Speederman. But The Social Network was where we first really paid attention to Andrew Garfield. It is this pseudo-Shakespearean tragedy about the beginnings of Facebook, where he plays Eduardo Saverin, who came up with the whole idea with the awesome and not problematic Mark Zuckerberg. But maybe his most powerful scene is when he's cut out of Facebook by Mark Zuckerberg, played by Jesse Eisenberg, and Sean Parker, played by Justin Timberlake. This is, of course, an Aaron Sorkin movie, so there's a lot of back and forth badinage, a lot of salty language, a lot of insulting language, and I feel like Andrew Garfield, more than any other character in this movie, gives the movie its soul. You as an audience member kind of feel like you could have been a player in this movie based on how relatable Andrew Garfield is as this role. His hurt and resentment and wrath really are the lasting takeaways of this movie. To this day, I cannot believe that Andrew Garfield was snubbed for this. It's a sensational winning performance that gets the entire audience on his side. There's nobody rooting against this character. He plays it to the hilt. Now, I'm never going to say Jeffrey Rush doesn't deserve a nomination. He was fabulous in The King's Speech. Mark Ruffalo and The Kids Are All Right. A movie that, by the end, I'm on board with. John Hawkes in Winter's Bone. More like bone chilling. Christian Bale in The Fire. Woo, he's loud. Jeremy Renner in The Town, it's a lot of accent. Jeremy Renner in The Town might be the performance I object to in this category, getting in over Andrew Garfield. Plus, he was already nominated by this time. Step aside, Jeremy Renner. Christian Bale won this year for The Fighter. He's, of course, hair-raising in that movie. Anybody who has to contend with Melissa Leo for that long, my prayers are with you. Andrew Garfield has since emerged as one of our most awardable actors. He's been nominated for Hacksaw Ridge, nominated for Tick, Tick, Boom. He won a Tony for Angels in America. To me, Andrew Garfield has a casual sophistication about him, and I love sophisticated characters in movies. I would love if he worked with someone like Mike Leigh, whose new movie Hard Truths looks fabulous. I cannot wait to see it. There are so many more performances I want to mention, but so little time. So I'm going to quickly name a few more before we go, and please make sure to watch some of these films and let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're doing that, subscribe to this channel. The more of you that get on this page, the more we can keep making stuff like this. Okay, so back to some more rapid fire snubs. Clifton Webb, Laura, 1944. Oof, do I love a fruity man. Laura, as you may know, is one of the definitive film noir mysteries of all time. I actually am not quite obsessed with it. I think most of the performances in this movie are somewhat flat, with the exception of the amazing Judith Anderson in a very small role. You might know her as Mrs. Danvers from Rebecca. But Clifton Webb is one of the main suspects in this story, and his energy of being both obsessed with Laura and yet something is kind of off about him is just exactly right. He's a one-of-a-kind character actor and a one-of-a-kind supporting actor, generally speaking, though later on he would get a Best Actor nomination for playing, I'm not kidding, Mr. Belvedere in the movie Sitting Pretty, and he is a complete bitch. Director Otto Preminger, one of the heroes of cinema as far as I'm concerned, chose him for this movie even though the studio found him too effeminate. And I'll say something about the studio. They were not blind. This is an effeminate man. The actor Robert Wagner considered Clifton Webb one of his mentors and in fact outed him in a book he wrote. And I have to be honest with you, it might not have been the worst thing Robert Wagner ever did. Brandon deWilde, HUD, 1963. As the years roll on, I think HUD might be the best movie of the 1960s. No disrespect to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is my spiritual sister film. But HUD, to me, is the Western I never knew I would be obsessed with. This is a genre that does not normally speak to me. And the Oscars rewarded it in kind. We got a Best Actor nomination for Paul Newman playing a complete asshole, womanizer, drunk. We have an Oscar-winning performance from Melvin Douglas. We have an Oscar-winning Best Actress performance from Patricia Neal in a relatively minor role. But Brandon deWilde, who's about 20 years old in this movie, is this watchful, innocent character who's sort of taken with HUD, even though he's not as mischievous himself, and also sort of choosing his own path in life. I think what's really impressive to me about this performance is you get a character who's innocent, and yet they're a whole character. It doesn't feel like they're written in a two-dimensional way. This is such a fabulous movie because it's really about these one-on-one conversations that take place in these stark Western environments, this desolate landscape, this hopeless environment, really. And you're watching these characters connect and sort of confront one another. The only other movie I can compare it to is The Last Picture Show, which came out in 1971 and is also an adaptation of a Larry McMurtry work. Brandon deWilde was nominated for an Oscar as a child in the movie Shane, and we didn't get much more work from him because he died in a car accident at the age of 30. But when you see him in this movie, he holds his own against three of the greatest actors we have. This is also the best ever movie directed by Martin Ritt, who did Norma Ray. And if you're familiar with Barbra Streisand's memoir, he's a sexist prick who also directed the movie Nuts. Dennis Hopper, Apocalypse Now, 1979. If you haven't figured it out by now, this category is and should be a hotbed for psychos. We've got winners ranging from Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards to Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. You've got the frigging Joker. And also, we should have Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now, who plays a character only known as a photojournalist, who really sets the stage for the final confrontation with Colonel Kurtz, who's one of the most demented and crazy characters in all of cinema. But my main takeaway from Apocalypse Now is the unhinged creepiness with which Dennis Hopper approaches this part. He's a devotee of Colonel Kurtz, who feels like he belongs in the Manson cult, but maybe in another life was just a roadie for the mamas and the papas. His delirium, his weirdo confidence, his complete divorce from reality. I can't think of another character like him, really. And he sets the stage for the final boss that will be Marlon Brando. Robert Duvall from the same film was nominated that year, but he's sort of way back at the beginning of the movie before it gets amazing to me. Jude Law, The Talented Mr. Ripley, 1999. 1999 is actually a banner year for the Best Supporting Actor category. You've got Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile. You've got Tom Cruise in Magnolia, being maybe the most Tom Cruise-y character we've ever seen, right? Didn't we feel like we really got to know him this time in a scary way? You've got Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. You've got Michael Caine, who won for The Cider House Rules. But Jude Law in this movie is such an old-school matinee idol, and yet there's a darkness there that's so intriguing too. He's really taken in, the way narcissists are, with this ingratiating Tom Ripley fellow. And The Talented Mr. Ripley, to me, even though it's made in 1999, feels like the last Hitchcock movie. It's the level of suspense, the level of glamour, the level of intrigue, the homoeroticism, all of Hitchcock's favorite things. If you've seen the new Ripley with Andrew Scott, this is the character played by Johnny Flynn. Both the Jude Law character and the Johnny Flynn character meet their end the same way. Why did they get on that boat? But in The Talented Mr. Ripley, it really takes an actor with a certain charisma, a certain look, and a certain feel to pull us into this world of luxury and fascination that Tom Ripley is in. And boy, does Jude Law give it. One of the last great glamorous performances. Jude Law was nominated that year, and he was nominated again for Best Actor in Cold Mountain from 2003, but the young pope is getting old. Let's move this along, people. I'm ready for another nomination. Lucas Hedges, Manchester by the Sea, 2016. Again, the Brandon deWilde conversation is relevant here. This is an innocent character who is not just innocent. He's like the conscience of the movie in a way. And I feel like he pushes the Casey Affleck character to deliver the tour de force we get from him eventually. Lucas Hedges is also just a fascinating actor. He has been on stage recently. He did Brokeback Mountain with Mike Faist. He was in the Waverly Gallery with Elaine May. You may have seen him in the awesome movie Ben is Back with Julia Roberts, quite underrated, and Boy Erased, which is correctly rated. He also gives a lovely performance in Lady Bird as I Believe Me. Everything that happens to that character is just my life. I don't know how Greta knew. Manchester by the Sea, of course, was nominated for all sorts of things. Best Actor, Casey Affleck, who won. Best Supporting Actress, Michelle Williams. Lucas Hedges did get a nomination, but I want to compare Lucas Hedges in this movie to Timothy Hutton in Ordinary People, where there's just something about his downcast glance that is immediately engaging. You see a contemplative quality to him, a worrying quality about him, but then also a quiet dignity too. You really sense that an entire person is there even when he's not speaking, or maybe especially when he's not speaking. He lost to Mahershala Ali in Moonlight, and I can't argue with that. It's a wonderful performance and leads us into a wonderful movie. But I hope there's more Oscar glory in Lucas Hedges' future, because there's just a relatable, human, conscientious quality to everything he does, and I think we need more of that. All right, is there anyone I missed? It's only 110 years of movie history. Maybe someone slipped through the cracks. I don't know. If there are any corrections you nerds want to roast me for in the comments, go ahead. Keep in mind, I'm human. Keep the discussion going below. We love to see it, and we really appreciate you watching. And seriously, click subscribe. Keep It is a weekly podcast that lives right here.